Hello and welcome to Let's H. I'm Pushjo, your host. Scroll down and click on the read more in the blurb, follow the links and become a patron on Patreon to support more quality content. So this week, we have another episode of Angels Season 5. It's episode 5 of Season 5, and it's called Life of the Party. Following on the trail of the episode Hellbound, which as you may remember, had Spike naked in it, and it was a good episode too. I mean, it had Spike naked in it, but it was a good episode. This appears to be the Naked Angel episode, because Angel literally spends more time on screen, or at least as much time on screen naked as he does with clothes on, which, if you're there for that, this is the episode to watch. I'm pretty sure this is probably also one of the episodes that made some of the fans react so harshly to Eve, even though there's not really a very compelling reason to react so badly to her if they're not reacting badly to the horrible cardboard cutout-tastic Nina. But whatever the reason, this is a good episode. The episode mostly focuses around Lorne and his attempts to get a party going. If you're familiar with the traditions of the Buffyverse, Halloween is usually not a particularly fashionable occasion for actual creatures of the night to come out. It's sort of a thing that's been established in the universe, but you don't really need to know this before watching the episode. Spike goes over it well enough in the episode itself. Lorne, however, has a lot riding on this Halloween party. As he says in the episode, this is one thing he can do because he doesn't have super strength. He's not really a violent person. He doesn't have a tremendous amount of supernatural knowledge knocking around in his head. But this is one thing that he can do. It's really great to have an episode focusing on him and focusing on his goals and something that really means a lot to him. Something that he wants to do. And obviously he's willing to sacrifice a lot for it. In this episode, he sacrifices his ability to sleep. And yeah, it's one of the things that kind of brings up more questions than it answers, but as with a lot of stuff in Angel and especially Buffy, sometimes it's better just not to think too hard about most of it. On the surface, it makes enough sense, because if they can transplant a lot of legal knowledge into Gunn's head, maybe they can remove Lorne's ability to sleep. It did also lead to an absolutely hilarious line that I love about a woman having her ennui removed, which just cracked me up. The dialogue in this episode is way better than I even remembered it, which I remembered it very fondly. I really liked this episode. And even though, as with all the other episodes of this season just about, Wes doesn't really emote in this episode, he still gets to act drunk, which makes him more expressive than usual. Fred also gets to act drunk, which makes her more expressive than usual, and the both of them actually serve a purpose in the episode. They're pretty fun. And Knox also gets to participate in the episode, and he's a pretty interesting character too. That is, until they throw him under a bus later. But that won't happen for some time. One of the things that I really wish they had done with this episode, though, I wish they had set it later than the episode Harm's Way. One of the big reasons why this party is so important is because Angel really needs a lot of positive PR. He hasn't been running the company very well so far, but some of the things that they mention don't happen, at least not on screen or very well, until Harm's Way. By that time, people have had enough of a reason not to like him. It's episode 5, so by now he doesn't really have the opportunity to create such a reputation. The only reputation he'd really have would be the already existing reputation for opposing them for the last 5 years. And to be honest, not a lot of people were left that probably even remembered that. But I'm not going to get into minutiae from Season 4 because that's just going to confuse everybody. They glossed over it here, and wisely. It's kind of great because this episode not only lets us see more of Lorne, but also lets us see more development from people like Angel who've really needed it. Some of the other episodes in this season make Angel look like a giant asshole, especially as the show gets later on in the season. And no, just because they claim later that he was planning some of this doesn't excuse it. He was clearly not motivated by any sort of plan for most of the season. He was just an asshole. This episode actually gives him a lot of good development, even though he's not really involved in a huge amount of it. It also gets to show that Lorne is important to him, and Lorne is important to the other people who make up our main characters. It paints Lorne as a fuller person. For a long time, he basically just got to fill in wherever he could in the cast, and he was treated about as poorly by the characters as he was by his exclusion from the opening credits. But Lorne is, in many ways, the heart and soul of the main cast of characters. And since, as we've covered in other reviews, a lot of them don't play a huge part in any episode, it's nice to see, for once, a focus on the emotional heart of the characters. It's a fun episode overall, and it has some genuinely funny lines, but more than that, it's not so much that it's light or funny or that it's a fun episode. The dialogue is genuinely good, and it's acted really, really well. It makes it a pleasure to see, and even though everybody doesn't have a huge part in it, everybody's part is good. It's a really uncommon occasion where that happens in Season 5. Most of the time, the vast majority of the characters are relegated to wallpaper, and even the ones like Angel that feature more prominently aren't well done. In this episode, though, everybody comes off being better characters for their time on screen. Even Spike, being basically turned into a punchline again, is amusing, and it actually adds something to the episode. What he has to say is important. Similarly, even though Gunn is a really hilarious joke in this, we actually also get to see more of his personality than we would see in most any other episode, which is a shame because the actor is really good, it's just that his storylines aren't. There's a lot of interesting things to think about in this episode, and of course things that'll pop up later, probably out of cost effectiveness more than any real desire to work them in later. Still, it's neat to see something that obviously had more depth to it, and you really get the feeling that the cast were having fun with it, and it was genuinely something interesting to them. Everybody got a little bit of development, and everybody got a moment to shine. Lorne learned a lot about what he was doing and the mistakes he had made in doing them, and Angel, at least we kind of hope at this point, learn that this is important to Lorne, and it's really important not to take him for granted. For some time now, ever since Lorne inexplicably decided not to reopen Caritas, he's been struggling for a role. They really had no reason to get rid of Caritas again. It was just, again, thrown under a bus for no real logic in the story. It was just to do that thing that they do where they retire a set by blowing it up. That's stupid. It's great that it led to Lorne being around more, and not just being wheeled out whenever they needed someone to conveniently read someone's destiny, but the character and the acting behind the character are both really good. Also, he's a snappy dresser, just saying. Really, I feel like this was an episode that was ignored by a good many of the writers, especially later on in the season, which is a shame because it's such a good episode. It's so much better than a lot of the crap that they give us later on. If they had really wanted to make it an interesting season and an interesting storyline about the conflict of them working at Wolfram and Hart, this is the episode to look at. They do bring up the fact that it's changing them, and that it may not be a good change, all things considered. Angel actually points this out himself, but you get the feeling that this was positioned in the wrong spot in the season, and as a result it seems like they don't actually learn what they learn in this episode, really, until later. Nonetheless, this is a really solid episode, and it's definitely worth an inclusion in your watch through of Season 5. Don't miss Life of the Party, because it literally is the life of the Season 5 party. This is one of the few instances where almost every regular character gets a chance to shine, and looks better for it, and also gets development in that chance to shine. The world seems like a fully developed place, and furthermore so does the rest of the universe around it. If more episodes in Season 5 were like Life of the Party, I can see it actually being a different story. I could see the show going on. Unfortunately, they were so uneven in the first half of the season, and a lot of what it gave us in the last half of the season was just so lacking or poor. But Life of the Party is very good, and we owe a lot to Andy Hallett's acting ability, charisma, and a completely lovable character in Lorne. Why couldn't we have more of this? This is really hitting the sweet spot too, because Season 4 was so relentlessly dour and bleak. It took itself way too seriously, whereas Season 5 actually had some fun episodes where it was fun to watch the show again. I think they learned from their mistakes in Season 4, but judging by some of the other episodes, they didn't learn quite well enough or quite quickly enough. Life of the Party, however, is a good episode, and it reminds us why Lorne is a great character that stayed with the cast for most of the show. Lorne really is and was the life of the party. We will miss you, Andy Hallett, and I'd like to take this time to just remember how fantastic he was in the role of Lorne. No matter how dire the show got, he was always a bright spot, and even if his character was often neglected, ignored, and taken for granted, we as the viewers definitely did not take him for granted. Lorne is one of the best parts of Season 5, as he is in pretty much every season where he appears, and I, for one, encourage everybody, even if they don't see any other episode of Season 5, check this episode out. You might really get into the potential that the season could have been, and it might make you want to watch some of the better episodes in this season. It's definitely worth a watch, whether or not you jump ship long before now. Also, I really want to go to that party. It looked like so much fun! Well, except for the violence and gun peeing everywhere. But, maybe that would have been fun for some people. So I'll be back next time with another episode from Angel Season 5. You're welcome. Bye.